Hola! In this video we're going to talk about verbs that are irregular in the preterit, or the past tense in Spanish, but these are verbs that also do have somewhat of a pattern to them. And so first we're going to talk about the steps for conjugating these irregular but patterned verbs in the preterit, and take a look at what the irregular verb stems are, because the main difference is that they have a different stem. There are a set of endings that go on to these irregular stems. That's what makes them a pattern verb, because there is a set of endings that get used over and over between the different verbs. Right. There are some exceptions to these conjugations, so we'll take a look at what those are, and we'll also do some practice. Alright, so let's take a look at what the steps are for conjugating these irregular verbs in the preterit. So we take the verb tener, for example, and what we do is we first start off with the irregular stem of that verb. And that is something you just have to memorize. All right, and the irregular stem for the verb tener is tuv, which still starts with a T, but it is quite different. And then for the yo form, we add on the yo ending, which is e. Alright, so let's take a look at what those irregular stems are. So for the verb tener, the irregular stem is tuv, right? Tener meaning to have. The verb querer, the irregular stem is quis. Estar, estuv. Poder, pud. Poner, pus. Hacer, is. Now notice that hacer ends in a C, which sometimes can have a hard k sound, but in most of the conjugations, then the sound is a soft S sound, is. Venir, vin. Andar, anduv. Saber, sup. Haber, ub. Decir, dich. Traer, traj. Traducir, traduj. Conducir, conduj. Right, and these are the endings that get tagged on to those irregular verb endings. Or rather, these are the endings that get tagged on to the irregular verb stems that we just saw. And so if you want to conjugate for the yo form, then you add a. So if you take the verb tener for the yo form, you have tuve, yo tuve. Or if you have querer for, let's say, the tu form, then it would be tu quisiste, tu quisiste. Right? And that's also the same conjugation that's used for the vos pronoun, which is used in parts of Central and South America. Él y usted, o, nosotros imos, vosotros istes, right? The you plural familiar pronoun that is used in Spain. And then the ellos, ellas, ustedes, ending ieron. Okay? Now you'll notice that in all of these endings there are no accent marks. So for these irregular pattern verbs, you won't have any accents. Okay? Now for the verb hablar, you have hablé with an accent, but if you write out tuve, there's no accent and it is not pronounced that way either. And you can maybe compare them to the ER and IR regular endings for the preterit, although there are some differences. And so for the él y usted form, you have the O, and for the yo form, A. But the two, nosotros, vosotros, and ellos, ellas, ustedes forms are similar to the ER and IR endings. But these are the endings that are used for all of these irregular pattern verbs. Right, there are exceptions when it comes to conjugating, and hacer is one of those exceptions. And it has an exception in the él, ella, usted form. So normally, we would think with the él, ella, usted form, that we would take the irregular stem for hacer, is, and that we would end the ending for él, ella, usted, o. What happens is that this is actually pronounced eco. Rather, eco. And we don't want it to be eco. We want it to be iso. We want to maintain that s pronunciation. Okay, so these two are wrong. So what we do for the LA usted form of hacer, we use a different spelling, although the pronunciation is the same. Do what we want. Iso. That way we have the pronunciation. Iso. In which the C changed to a Z to maintain the S, the S sound. The other set of exceptions for these irregular verbs are the verbs decir, traer, conducir, and traducir. And they have something that happens with them, all because they end with the letter J on their irregular stems. Ich, tra, conduc, traduc. They all end in the letter J, jota. So we still use the stems that we have listed here, but instead of using the regular ending for the ellos, ellas, ustedes form, uses a slightly modified one. So if we want to say they said something, ellos dij, that's the stem, dijeron. Alright, so now let's do a little bit of practice. So you have 5 prompts here. Conjugate the verb for the given pronoun in the preterite tense, and these are all irregular verbs. Alright, now go ahead and press pause on the video so you can take a moment to complete the practice, and after you're done completing those, then you can press play again and we'll go over the answers. Alright, so let's discuss the answers now. Number 1, tener tu tuviste. You start off with that irregular verb stem for tener, which is tuv, and then it's for the tu form, so you add on the irregular ending, iste, tuviste. Hacer, ellos hicieron. Decir, ustedes dijeron. Now, remember that the ellos, ellas, ustedes form normally is hicieron, like we see in number 2 with hicieron, but if the irregular stem ends in a J, jota, as dij for decir does, then that ellos, ellas, ustedes form changes to eron. And so it's only for those stems that end in J, jota. For querer, nosotros quisimos. Number 5, venir el vino. Okay, gracias. Hasta la próxima.